If you had to lose a large chunk of body fat in a very short amount of time, how would you set that up? What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the marker board. School is in session, and today we're going to be going over a fun little hypothetical scenario. I feel like this could be applicable to a lot of people, and that is the scenario of someone who has a large chunk of body fat that they want to lose in a short period of time. Maybe they have a wedding or a family reunion coming up, or maybe they misjudged their show timeline and are actually a little further behind from schedule than what they would have thought. How would I, as a coach, structure someone's program from a nutrition, training, and supplementation perspective in order to help accomplish this goal of getting lean, but getting lean quickly? Unquestionably, the most important part of this process is going to be the nutrition. We know in order to lose body fat that we must be in a caloric deficit. We must be eating fewer calories than what our body is burning at rest. And if we're trying to lose a large amount of body fat, it's not going to be good enough for us to just be in a caloric deficit. We need to be in as big of a caloric deficit as we can possibly handle. And what I believe to be the best way to go about getting into an extremely steep caloric deficit is to follow what is known as the PSMF diet. PSMF stands for protein sparing modified fast. A fast is going an extended period of time without eating. So if you kind of piece two and two together, a protein sparing modified fast would lead you to believe that this is trying to eat as few calories as possible while still sparing your protein and giving your body the amino acids that it needs in order to sustain muscle tissue. Because at the end of the day, this is the most important thing. We don't care about how much body fat we lose if we lose muscle tissue in the process. Whether you're a bodybuilder or a recreational lifter, we want to look good. And the way that that gets achieved is by low body fat percentages and large amounts of muscle mass, not low body fat percentages at the expense of losing muscle mass. We shouldn't care about how much body fat we're losing if we're losing muscle mass in the process. So the best way to combat that, from my experience, would be to follow the protein sparing modified diet, which is essentially a diet that's focused on eating protein and hardly anything else. Now, how much protein do we need to eat in order to minimize the amount of muscle tissue that we could be catabolizing? Because the larger the caloric deficit that we're in, the higher increased risk of muscle catabolism and losing muscle mass. We've kind of seen that muscle protein synthesis and nitrogenic benefits of protein seem to max out somewhere around 1.2 grams of protein per pound of body weight. So for a hypothetical example, let's say that we have someone who is 200 pounds. That would be 240 grams of protein total for the day. And if we do some math on that, we know that there are 4 calories per gram of protein, which gives us a total caloric intake, only looking at the calories coming from protein, at only 960 calories per day. And no matter what your basal metabolic rate is, I can almost guarantee you, unless you're a bikini girl, that 960 calories is going to be an extremely steep caloric deficit for you. Now, obviously, we're going to have some degree of carbs and fats that are in there because they are going to be naturally occurring from the foods that you're going to be eating when following this diet. For a safe rule of thumb, I would conclude that you're probably going to be somewhere around 10 grams of carbs by the end of the day and probably 10 grams of fat. Those carbs coming from fibrous vegetables, which you'll probably use to help combat the hunger, as well as maintain gastric motility and getting some sort of micronutrient and vitamin mineral needs through those, but also through some of the direct fat sources that you're going to be getting from your meats. And now obviously with a limited calorie diet, a lot of the meats that you're going to be choosing are going to be very, very lean cuts of poultry, fish, beef, but there are still going to be some trace fats that are going to naturally occur from those food sources. And when we get into a period where we have an extreme caloric restriction, I believe the value of each gram of carb and fat needs to be fully maximized. And even in this case, protein needs to be maximized as well. I don't think it's going to be good enough for you to just eat 240 grams of random proteins. I think that those proteins need to specifically be high quality proteins that are high in essential amino acids, because those are going to be what we need to stimulate muscle protein synthesis, limit muscle protein breakdown, which is what is going to help keep the muscle mass that we are so delicately trying to maintain as we get into this deficit. Now, the fat sources I kind of talked about earlier, some of those are going to come from your meat protein sources, but I also think this would be an instance where it would be extremely valuable for someone to supplement with essential fatty acids, omega-3s, and fish oils. I'm a huge advocate of these year-round, but I think that they become even more important the less that your dietary fat intake is. If someone's eating 70 to 80 grams of fat per day, they may have a little bit more room for error, that they could eat some lower quality fat sources and still maintain adequate vitamin and mineral and nutrient needs. But as the fat intake gets lower and you need to start being more mindful about where those fats are coming from, the importance of having high quality fatty acids coming from your fish oils gets amplified even more. And as we talked about earlier, the few grams of carbohydrates that you're going to be eating are almost entirely going to be coming from fibrous vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, whatever it is that digests well for you, mainly for vitamin mineral needs, but also to maintain gastric motility. When you get into a very, very short, deprived calorie diet, usually gastric motility tends to slow down a little bit and people will get very constipated and have a hard time going to the bathroom. So getting fiber in through your vegetable intake is not only going to help fight off the hunger, but it's going to help maintain some GI health in that process as well. If you guys are interested in learning more about the protein-sparing modified fast diet, I would strongly recommend that you guys buy and read the Rapid Fat Loss Handbook by Lyle, McDonald. It essentially covers this diet in way more detail than what I could cover here and gives some strategic plans for refeeding, going into maintenance from the diet, and a bunch of other things as well. So if you're interested in this topic of an extremely low calorie, protein focused diet, I would highly recommend that you look at Lyle's book. When we take a look at the training side of things look drastically different here compared to if I was working with somebody who was trying to put on muscle mass at the maximum rate. The big thing that I would want to focus on when looking at the training in an instance like this would be doing the bare minimum amount of work that is necessary in order to stimulate your muscle to maintain. Whether or not we can build muscle in a deficit is debated quite frequently. What I can say absolutely certain is that when you are in an instance like this, where you are in an extreme caloric deficit, the odds of building muscle are extremely, extremely low. If you are in maybe a little bit less aggressive of a deficit and maybe more of a moderate to mild deficit, the odds of building new muscle tissue are considerably higher. But if you're eating, in this case, maybe 1,200 calories or lower for the entire day, your muscle protein synthetic rates are not going to be very high. Energy availability is going to be very low. So it's extremely, extremely unlikely that you are going to be building any sort of muscle mass during this phase at all. Because of that, the goal should shift from stimulating the muscle to grow to stimulating the muscle to just not go anywhere. And the amount of work that you need to do in order to do that is considerably less than the amount of work that is needed in order to stimulate new growth within the muscle. I would consider this phase to be a phase where you would focus on very minimalist training, doing the bare amount needed to stimulate the muscle to not catabolize, but to still stick around. You could really shape this up any way that you want to. It's really going to kind of depend on the split. You know, if you're someone like me who follows a full body training program, you can maybe do full body training twice a week, maybe on like a Monday or Friday. You may be able to do full body training once a week and still stimulate the muscle to grow, depending on how hard you're training. If you're following push-pull legs, maybe you do a push day on Monday, a pull day on Wednesday, and a leg day on Friday. If you're doing upper lower, maybe you do an upper session on Monday and a lower session on Thursday. There's a bunch of different ways that you could set this up, but to kind of recap everything or to kind of generalize everything, I would suggest that you bring your frequency down to bare minimum, hitting your muscles once a week. Bring your volume down to bare minimum, maybe 1 to 2 working sets on that muscle per week, done at very high levels of intensity. The closer that you train to failure, the more likely that you're going to be stimulating the muscle to not catabolize, and the more atrophy that you're going to limit. And you're really just focusing on going into the gym, maintaining your logbook numbers as best as you can, and then getting out of the gym. You are not going to have carbs, fats, calories of any kind that are going to be shuttled and dedicated to recovering from your weight training. So you really should be focusing on making your training as minimalist as possible. Do the bare minimum that you need to do to stimulate the muscle to stay, and then get out of the gym. I also wanted to talk about steps or cardio during this phase. I think that they're almost entirely worthless as another fat loss tool. We know that the amount of calories that you burn through cardio and steps alone is very, very, very small. And if you are already someone who is in a major calorie deficit, burning an extra 50 to 100 calories per day from steps or cardio is not going to bring you anything beneficial. If you're already in a 2,000 calorie deficit, how much more fat are you going to lose on a 2,100 calorie deficit? And with as few calories and as little carbs and fats as you're eating, your recovery capabilities are already at rock bottom. And so burning or expending more of those recovery points on steps or cardio is completely worthless at this point, in my opinion. When it comes to supplementation, a big piece of this puzzle is going to be whether the person is natural or not. I think the supplementation should be focused around what problems or obstacles are you going to face with a diet and a training setup like this. I think the two main things that you're going to notice by following this type of program is going to be very high appetite and very low energy. And so some supplements that we can use to kind of help combat those things would be caffeine. That would be pretty straightforward. Green tea, you could maybe slip in there as well. And I'm a big fan of ephedrine and using the ECA stack, which is kind of more of a old school way to increase energy and suppress your appetite, but it is still available out there for you to get. And I think if you're someone who is natural and competing in a drug-tested federation, I would actually have to check if ephedrine is on the drug-tested list or not. I'm actually not sure. But if you're somebody who's natural, these would maybe be some supplements that you could use to help with this phase. Now, if you're not natural, then you could also use these for your energy and appetite suppression, but there are also some other supplements and goodies that you could use as well to help improve the efficiency of this phase. The obvious ones right off the bat would be AAS, androgenic anabolic steroids, and exogenous growth hormone. Those are obviously going to help with muscle retention, maybe keeping your libido and energy levels a little bit higher, which, as we talked about, when you're eating such a low calorie diet, your overall nitrogen retention levels and muscle protein synthetic rates are diminished considerably. So just taking AAS and GH would help offset that a little bit. You are already in an extreme caloric deficit with the setup that we are using, but if you are an enhanced person, especially one who has increased rates of muscle retention, maybe we can crank up that deficit a little bit more by using clenbuterol, T3 and or T4, which may help offset some of the natural thyroid and metabolism down regulation that may be happening from this extreme caloric suppression. But those could be some tools that you could use. Now, these tools could very likely also backfire. Anybody who is an enhanced athlete or hasn't coached and enhanced people before can maybe think of a time where maybe they've introduced, to be very specific, the thyroid hormones seem to be the biggest problem here, T3 and T4. If you're already in an extreme caloric deficit, then adding those on top may just completely flatten the athlete out beyond any point of saving. And as we talked about towards the beginning, the whole purpose of this is to maintain the muscle mass. And with the situation of using the T3 and the T4, you may catabolize that muscle mass a little bit more because of the increased thyroid rate. Now, whether or not the muscle retention from the AAS and the growth hormone will exceed that, it depends on the doses and a lot of other things. But if you're somebody who's really looking to go for it and really trying to crank up the knob on fat loss as much as they can, you could add in some other lipolyptics on top of this. And then retatrutide, I'm not really quite sure how you pronounce it now, but this peptide is obviously all the craze right now. The big thing that it does above all else is it seems to help people suppress their appetite a little bit more, which is a big problem and a big obstacle with following an extreme caloric deficit like this, because it doesn't matter how good your plan is on paper. If the appetite is very high and ravenous, that's causing you to cheat and binge on your diet, you're going to undo any progress that you would have made without doing that. Thanks for watching today, guys. I hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. As always, if you have not yet subscribed to the channel, then please do so that you don't miss out on the next video. If you guys are interested in online coaching or consultations or any of the services that I offer, you can check out my website at btbtraining.net. I also have that in the description below. If you are training today, then train hard. If you're resting today, then rest hard. And as always, guys, take care of yourselves.